big heaters.
Well, only one was his. We
One-
rented the other one.
Yeah, we rented a second one. And,
And that cost $600 just to rent it
yeah,
for a day.
one
I
day.
don't know where they normally sit.
Anyway,
Right here. They normally sit here.
we
Okay.
cooked these two rooms. And, Chris's room.
Football game.
Is that your bag, Sue?
Hmm?
Is that your bag on the table?
No, it's our.
No,
and
No, well, that's
don't forget this
Jackie's
is on the
bag.
that's
floor.
Jackie's.
I won't. Thank you.
She's gonna come around.
Anyway, we cooked this room up to 130 degrees.
What, this room?
Yeah, it took hours. Hours.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Hours.
And all while he was
I didn't
doing
think to
mine, we
bring
were
a-
terrified the
Had-
maintenance
had
guy
to be
was
noticed.
gonna, I knew he wouldn't, but
Right, right.
Dan was
I didn't think to bring
afraid
a
the
pad
maintenance
pen.
guy would
Oh,
hear the sound
This is my light
of the
purse.
fan,
I
which
have my
is loud.
everything
And I
purse.
said, he won't.
That means
know
the
it's
light
not
comes
his
out of?
business to
Yes.
check up on the residents.
No, I mean,
He's-
in my
he said
big purse, I
he's
have everything.
the
in
work-
there.
I know.
I don't even think I have a pin
Do
in.
maintenance on the
Yeah.
work orders.
I'm sure you have a
He
spare
is
pin
not gonna
somewhere,
do,
maybe?
he's not gonna come in,
Nope.
but he was worried.
There's. I saw some over
But I
there a while
have an
ago.
excuse
anyway.
all prepared.
Yeah.
I learned it very young how to fib to get out of it.
How to defend yourself.
Well, my brother, you know, I
Find one?
had a big
Yes.
brother.
Good.
Okay.
Me
It was
too.
his tutelage that did it.
And as I've been doing most of these Sundays is starting with one of the prayers that Charles Fillmore used. Jesus Christ is now here, infusing me and the world with his light and wisdom. I'm going to repeat that and maybe we can say that together. Jesus Christ is now here, infusing me and the world with his light and wisdom. Let's see if we can do this together. Jesus Christ is now here, infusing me and the world with his light and wisdom. Father, we give thanks for this demonstration of that light and truth that is Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
And we start on page 147. The Nativity Myth.
142 is mine.
Yeah, it isn't 147.
There.
142, yes, I read it
Is
wrong.
that what you said?
Yeah, 142, I said 147.
That's what I thought you said.
I have to
142.
watch numbers. They come and go.
They're difficult to see.
Yes.
The lights.
The Nativity Myth, I'll start with it.
Need a hand?
Get my zipper and zipper.
Ah, shoot. You know what, there you go. It fell behind.
I always have trouble with my purse, too.
Yes, I know you do.
I don't have it anymore. That's another thing that disappeared.
Really?
When I was in Paris in '88, I got a sac de l'homme, a man's bag,
Yes.
which is a long strap and a rectangular
Ouch.
pouch, yeah. Longchamp was the company. They were very well-known leather place in Paris. And it was a beautiful bag. And I used it to do weddings, and I'd put all the stuff I needed
Yeah.
for a wedding or funeral in there. And that was my working bag, you know, when I had. And it used to be in my office.
Oh.
And it's not there anymore.
Somebody took it?
Yeah. Well, I can't find it. It's like my father's
Flag.
case with his flag from his military service is gone too. It was on one of the tall things out in the hall, and all of a sudden I realized it's not there anymore. Yeah. Who would want to steal my flag?
Well, yeah. Who could get it out of here? I mean, that's a little bigger than your pocket.
Well, yeah, it's hard to put. Here, put this in. My father used to say, "I put this in your purse, will you?"
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's probably why you started locking the front door,
Yeah.
so nobody could just come in whenever. I would assume.
I once had my phone was sitting on the table in the hall, and then all of a sudden there was no phone. Somebody stole it,
Boy.
and they came back and gave it back to me.
Really?
They felt so badly about it.
That's good.
Yeah, I thought it was fine.
I love people with a conscience.
Yeah. Yeah, he's still a friend. He's a street person
ready?
that I know out here.
Arthur, ready?
Anyway, the nativity myth. When you recall that the birth narratives of Matthew and Luke are non-historical, made up as they are of pious legends and midrashic type invention, whose highly symbolic and spiritual meaningful character must nevertheless be stressed, and that the parables come from ancient saying sources, it becomes even more apparent that what we are dealing with in the Gospels are literary editions of allegorical and mythical themes that have a history of their own, but contain little history themselves. All the legends about virgin birth, a star in the east, 3 wise men bearing gifts, the evil power that tries to take a special child's life, and angelic messengers have, as we have seen, been enacted many times before in the myths of Egypt and other places too numerous to mention. Bishop John Spong, members of the Jesus Seminar, and many other contemporary scholars have worked and reworked the birth narratives, shifting them like finely powdered flour. Sifting them like finely powdered flour, but none has, in my view, shown their full depth and significance as Massey and Kuhn have done. Today's critical exegetes, I am persuaded, are still caught in the literalist historical trap, even as they try to extricate the Jesus story from its mythical package. They are the rationalizers of the mythos against whom Massey in particular forewarned. Lose the myth and you lose everything. So they keep reinforcing the idea that the myth is what's important. One of the quotations from what's his name?
Tom Harpur.
Tom Harpur, yeah. Is that any history that happens to be in the Bible is incidental. It's an accident more of anything. It just happened, but it's not what's important. And scholars continue to see it as history, which means they miss the underlying real meaning of the story. You remember Aesop's fables, right?
Yes.
Those wonderful little stories with animals and things that talked, and they did other things, but they taught something. There was a message in those things. These Bible stories are the same thing. It's the message that's buried in there, and there's more message buried in the symbolism than there would be in words. So this just is a reminder of that. Lose the myth, and you lose everything. Somebody want to take the next paragraph?
The sad truth, as one reconsiders the conflicting nativity stories of Matthew and Luke, is that the resolution of the allegorical birth of the Christ into the delivery of a literal baby in a localized historical Bethlehem has kept the rest of humanity from realizing the true meaning of the messianic fulfillment. With the 3rd century conversion of an age-old spiritual drama meant to depict the truth about each of us into the biography of a unique man-savior, the great truth that a ray of the solar logos was incorporated distributively into animal humanity, faded out, and was obliterated. Among other things, this has meant that the true inner meaning of the annual celebration of Christmas for each individual person has been lost. I am reminded of the response made by Sir Wallace Budge in his book Osiris and the Egyptian Resurrection to a careless assertion by some of his contemporaries that the people of West Africa were primitive savages. Budge wrote, "This is a great mistake, for they possess the remnants of a noble and sublime religion, the precepts of which they have forgotten, and the ceremonies of which they have debased. Nowhere is this phenomenon of decline more visible than in what has happened to the religious treatment of Christmas. The story is not the literal account it seems to be on the surface. It is about the birth in the heart of every human being of the Christ. It is a supreme telling of the central myth of all religion, the incarnation of the divine into human flesh, as the quotation at the very beginning of our study says. Though Christ 1,000 times in Bethlehem be born, but not within thyself, thy soul will be forlorn. The cross on Golgotha thou lookest to in vain, unless within thyself it be set up again."
This is one of those power passages. The reminder. These stories, they're not literal. They're not literal accounts of something that actually happened. They are the story of this evolution in ourselves, this growth of the awareness of the divinity that God implanted in every human being. And that's the important message. But when you deal with the Bible as its history, these things all happened in their history, it takes away all that teaching, takes away the subtext.
Yeah.
And it just becomes, it's an event. I can watch an event and forget it very quickly afterwards. I mean, it doesn't mean much. But when I look deeper into something, and it actually begins to do something inside of myself and make me feel things and understand things that I didn't understand before, to see life in a different way, that's the prize. And that's what you get with the mythos. Mythos doesn't mean it's a lying story. Mythos just means it's a teaching. That's all.
I've been interested in that butterfly you've got on Sunday morning during the meditation. Teilhard de Chardin said, there are 2 branches on the tree of life that have to do with transformation. One is the butterfly and the other is humanity. And it's the only 2, and the butterfly branch has stopped growing, but the humanity branch continues. But it's the only 2 things that can transform.
Yeah.
Wow. So when I watch that butterfly, I think, yeah.
One Easter, I had a gobo. That's a slide that you put into a spotlight, and it projects an image on the wall. And I had this beautiful pink butterfly that was almost the width of the stage
Oh, wow.
on Easter.
Whew.
Yeah, it was just wow.
Transformation.
Yeah,
yes,
it was wonderful. What a story. The Christ 1,000 times in Bethlehem be born. Frank Judici quoted that, but he never talked about its importance. What does that say to you? Though Christ 1,000 times in Bethlehem be born, but not within thyself, thy soul will be forlorn. What does you get it? Mm-hmm. If you don't experience that birth yourself,
It's for nothing.
meaningless. It is absolutely meaningless.
Yeah.
With that awareness and that event, your life becomes richer, greater, fuller. Without it, it continues to be the daily struggle. And he never said a word about that. I've never heard anybody say anything about what that really meant.
He knew that it fascinated him somehow, but he didn't really understand what it was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as a Bible teacher, after Henry Hunt, what was Henry Hunt?
Herbert.
Hunt, yeah. After Herbert Hunt, he only knew what Herbert Hunt taught, and he didn't. What did he have? These things hadn't come out yet.
Yeah.
And what you have missed is it's in the 3rd century, the traditional church, they started taking out all of this story of Jesus and making it history and events. And it's not about the indwelling Christ in us. It's about Jesus. He's the one. And it's like worship of Jesus. And he never said, worship me, ever. So that 3rd, 4th century is where we lost our Christianity. Because what we're seeing here is the original Christianity before that period of time. The next one is, the point is that while on the surface the gospel appears to be a form of biography combined with proclamation, closer examination reveals that they are not biographies at all. They are extraordinarily imprecise or vague just at the places where we would most expect explicit details. We know nothing about Jesus' appearance from these texts. The color of his skin or his eyes, his approximate height or size, whether he was bearded or clean-shaven, whether he had long hair or was balding, and so on. We're left wholly guessing about his date of birth and the year he died, even about whether he was married or single, because of the vast silence about the years between his birth and the beginning of his ministry, apart from Luke's legend-like story about Jesus visiting the temple at the age of 12 for his bar mitzvah. Volumes have been filled with speculations that grow wilder with passing time. There are legends about supposed visits to England, mystical journeys to Egypt, Tibet, India, and much more. Mm-hmm. Credulous souls who have great difficulty discerning evidence from fanciful conjecture flock to buy each latest embroidery on this theme.
When my Montessori instructor, Mrs. Kasperi, was in India, Tibet actually she was. She said one of the monks said to her, showed her their holy books and said, this book says your Jesus was here. Mm-hmm. So even around the world they've got the myth going.
Yeah.
Well, there's something about Jesus, or this soul incarnated many times.
It's universal.
And so we don't know, and in India they call him Ishu.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's universal.
Jesus. Yeah.
And Yeshu means universal?
Yeshu means Jesus.
Jesus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's,
that's their name for the appearance of however that happened.
Yeah, the Aramaic is Ishon. Sue?
I don't know.
Jesus, Ishon?
Yeshu,
In Aramaic,
Yeah.
Ishwa.
Ishwa.
Shwa.
Ishwa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody take the next paragraph?
Mark, the earliest gospel, omits everything before Jesus' appearance as an adult man at the Jordan River to be baptized by John. It contains no birth narratives, no genealogies, no traces of childhood or youth whatsoever. This is a strange way to begin any attempt at a life of a person clearly regarded as spectacular. Mark's gospel is so lean and spare, so lacking in details about Jesus' life, that Jesus' ministry could have only lasted a little over 1 year, as we have seen. It is only from John that the case can be built for a 3-year time span. Long ago, I was struck by how Mark liked to link each anecdote with the next, with the word immediately, ethos in Greek,
Yeah,
Ethos.
Euthos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
ethos, which gives a breathless sense of pace, but is usually a cover-up for the author's lack of knowledge of any specific time sequences. As Papias said, Mark did not have his account in any particular order. Scholars, myself included, have often described the gospel as little more than a passion narrative with an introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. However, the real center of interest and the place where the details start to flow is not the birth, but the events leading up to and culminating in the arrest, trials, and crucifixion of Jesus. When the story nears its climax, it takes very little imagination indeed to see the entire gospel as a ritual drama or mystery play. The divine teacher is tested by the adversary, gathers disciples, heals the sick, and preaches the good news about God's kingdom. Finally runs afoul of his bitter enemies, suffers, dies, and is resurrected after 3 days. This is the total pattern of the sun god in all the ancient dramas, as we have already seen. What is different about Mark and the other more complex Gospels is that it is all presented as if it was genuine history. Kuhn's marshalling of the evidence of this point seems to be beyond rebuttal. He shows that the stories of the arrest, trial, and crucifixion are quite understandable as scenes in a mystery play, but inexplicable as facts of history. He writes, quote, "The trial is presented as lasting through one night when, as the great scholar Renan notes, an eastern city is wrapped in silence and darkness, quite natural as scenes in a mystery play, but not as actual history."
The eastern city is wrapped in darkness.
Bring my reading glasses next time. My prescription, these are just,
Somebody want to take the passion narratives?
All right. I have examined in detail how the Egyptian ritual, a multitude of symbolic events are thrown into the night preceding the Passover of the spring equinox. March 21st, the most important date in the Egyptian calendar, and all the various sun-based myths. The spring equinox was next to the summer solstice. The single most important cosmic event for an ancient culture and religions. Oops. From the Druids at Stonehenge to the native North Americans, from the heart of the African jungle to the fertile plains of Mesopotamia, it's the supremely symbolic moment when the sun's returning vigor actually draws equal to and then surpasses the forces of darkness. For the Egyptians, this particular night was symbolic of the dark night of the soul in incarnation, which ended with the soul passing over the boundary at Easter. Just 3 days later, Kuhn writes, all processes of transformation, purifying, perfecting, glorifying, reach their consummation on the last merge of this night period as it breaks into the dawn of Easter's spiritual sun. In the Egyptian calendar, this would be the night of the Passover of spring. It was for this reason that the Egyptian drama placed the crowning of every spiritual process on this eventful equinoctial night.
Remember, it was all purely symbolic. And so it was no problem to allocate to the night any number of representations of the soul's experience as it ends its earthly history. This is why in the gospel accounts of the Passion, the various trials before the high priest, Herod, and then Pilate, the Last Supper, Jesus' bloody sweat in the garden, his betrayal, his bearing the cross, his procession through the old city, his mockery and suffering, his crucifixion, his death and burial, and much else could all be staged on this night. But it was not and could not be actual history.
Sadly, the final chapters of the gospel materials in the 2nd and 3rd centuries were so blinded by their fanatical desire to crush paganism and change spiritual allegory into history that they didn't pause to reckon with the difficulty of crowding this long series of varied events into the course of a single evening, Jesus, accordingly. Course of a single evening.
Period. Jesus
Oh,
according.
evening. Oh,
Yeah,
I see.
that's
I'm
the
sorry,
period.
I missed the period. That didn't make sense. Jesus, accordingly, as Kuhn Riley observes, was given an impossibly busy night to close his sad career.
That's a great line.
Yeah.
The literates of the drama didn't scruple to ask a credulous laity to believe that in one single night occurred the Last Supper with the disciples, the washing of the disciples' feet, the lengthy walk to the Mount of Olives, the long watch in the Garden of Gethsemane, the disciples falling asleep when Jesus categorized them for not being able to watch with him 1 hour, the arrest and the severing and subsequent healing of the ear cut off by Peter, then 3 distinct judicial trials involving the summoning of judges, juries, attendants, and others, the populace always available in the dead of the night.
Yeah.
Then the mockery of the soldiers and the parting of Jesus' garments with the forcing on him of the crown of thorns. Then the march along the Via Dolorosa and up the hill of Golgotha, the place of the skull, and the harrowing crucifixion which ran into the next morning. As I re-examined the details of the Passion text, something that the
That through,
something that through unfamiliarity with the story, I had never really brought back, really thought about, much about, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, the over familiarity with the story.
Since he used to be a Bible teacher in a what do you call it, a seminary.
One of those, yeah.
Yeah, he taught this so many times that he no longer paid much deep attention to it. And that continues.
I realized that there is an obvious meager limit to what can actually occur in the temporal span of one evening. The Gospels here stand helplessly vulnerable to the attack of plain reason. They are indeed exposed to the old manuscripts of the dramatized ritual of the incarnation and resurrection of the sun god, a ritual that was first Egyptian, later Gnostic and Hellenic, then Hebrew, and finally adopted ingloriously by the Christian movement and characterized into history. The manuscripts that were not history until
Yeah, the manuscripts were not history.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay, the manuscripts were not history until, in Christian hands, the esoteric meaning had been obscured and the wisdom needed to interpret them most
Historically. Non-historically.
was wanting. My eyes are getting fuzzy.
Where's your,
I'm
you
sorry.
got your flashlight with you?
Yeah, I did. And, no, I got another one.
Is it dead?
No, if it doesn't light, just
You know, that's so interesting.
hit it one.
I always told my dad that I kind of gave up on reading the Bible because it was so confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me because I was trying to take it literal. And, and he tried to explain to me, but still, if you don't know the history, it's like even reading it mythically, it's still, I
Yeah.
just had a hard time understanding it.
And thank God in unity with that we do what's called metaphysical Bible interpretation. And what that means is knowing the symbols that are being used in the writing so that we can interpret it as a spiritual thing instead of a physical thing.
Well, I've learned more since I've been coming here than I ever.
Yeah.
Because I get, it's, for me, it's like, I just gave up
Yeah.
because it was so confusing.
It's got to be frustrating because, well, I'm going to say that for many, many years, I knew there was something more. There was something I was missing. And this was it. Knowing the reality of this, yeah, I did metaphysical Bible interpretation, and I've been pretty good at it. I like doing it. But to know the what and the why, and what really happened in those years, the 3rd, 4th century, to change Christianity so tremendously. It's not what it was. And it hasn't been what it was since those years. It's become something totally different. Thanks to the church, whatever that may be. So,
If they were copying off of all these other religions, why didn't they mention it? Why didn't they bring it up? Why did they, watch Christianity?
they being the people who
Everybody that's mentioned here,
in their time, it wasn't necessary. They all understood it. They understood the language. They understood the symbolism. It was in the 3rd and 4th century that they stopped teaching anybody about what the symbolism was. And they were seeing it as literal words and literal happenings.
So the Egyptian, the Gnostic, the Hellenic, the Hebrew, they all made the same mistake. They all thought it was history after the 3rd and 4th century.
That apparently has been pretty standard.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just been unusual, but when you go back far enough, when they wrote these, they knew what they were writing. And the people who were going to read these things
Yeah.
knew what they were saying.
Yeah.
But by the time you got through these centuries and various religions, various concepts, it became garbled. And they didn't necessarily understand the symbols. Judaism still has it, but it's not in the Torah, except as it is in our Bible. It's in symbol in the Torah. They're books of the Bible. But it is in, well, if you look up there on the wall, the blue and red books at the top, and the dark red at the second section down. Those are Kabbalah, and that's the mysticism of the Jews, of Judaism, and it's in there, but it's in there in symbols. And I had the benefit of studying with Jewish teachers of Kabbalah, and it makes the symbolisms clear. And now I can read those, and I don't know all the symbols yet, and I don't have a teacher anymore. He went back to Israel, but the stories are fascinating, and they're interesting stories. One of the interesting stories that's in there is of a building in the great city, which is now recognized as New York,
Mm-hmm.
and 2 towers
Mm-hmm.
that fall.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's in there. There are other things in there, and they've discovered. I have been, what I want to say, not one to leap in and accept what some of the Jewish scholars are saying, but they talk about hidden codes in the Torah, and then they find them, and the words and the things are so germane to certain things that have happened in history in the code. And the code is it's complex because it's a code of this letter and then so many letters forward to the next letter, and then the same distance to the next letter, and then those letters put together bring out the words, and the words are in Hebrew, and in Hebrew it can say it tells the story. And I have watched videos of this and long interpretations, and they're amazing. Mm-hmm. And still, I don't go so far as to say, "Oh, it's real. It's totally real." But boy, it sure looks like it. You know, that story there about 2 towers in New York, and
Yeah,
the fall and the fire.
Yep.
It's
Nostradamus came up with that same language.
same kind of stuff. So there's one mind.
Isn't Nostradamus Jewish?
Nostradamus, I think it was French, wasn't he?
Well, he was French.
What's he?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
his writing is in ancient French. But I don't know. There's a lot of things in this world we have forgotten or we have yet to learn. And this stuff that we're reading, it was once known. This was not secret. But the church, over centuries, buried it. There's a lot of stuff they still don't want us to know.
No, they lose power and control over the people if the people knew.
You have to remember that an organization ends up being made by people, by humans. And where there are humans, there's the desire for power and control and all of these things that come out of personality
Yeah.
and
Come out of fear.
fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
What if we lose control of them?
Yippee!
Yeah.
And greed.
So in
Oh,
Isaiah it says, set the captives free?
yeah.
Yeah.
The Catholic Church in America is becoming stronger all the time.
Yeah.
It's also branching off. And some of those Catholic churches are not beholden to the Pope. And that's Bishop William's church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not Roman Catholic. They're not beholding to the Pope. They teach metaphysics.
Yep.
Yeah. They believe in reincarnation. So it's a whole different thing than Catholicism.
Yeah.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much has been lost. That's been actually buried. There's stuff that came out of the Dead Sea Scrolls we still haven't seen.
No. They became privately owned.
Yeah.
And then people would not allow anybody to see them. And in fact, nobody knew what was in the Dead Sea Scrolls until one man finally decided to publish everything he knew, everything he had. And he did. He published it and suddenly it was out there.
Yeah,
Everybody.
he made that decision himself.
Yeah,
and he
it
was
was-
on the board that was dealing with these, and only these scholars were allowed to see any of this
Yeah, and he
stuff.
published it.
And finally,
Oh,
he
man.
published it, which was like putting it in the newspaper, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden, nothing was hidden
Yeah.
except the things that hadn't been opened or seen yet. And there's still some of those. Just recently, I heard about a new gospel. I don't know if you've heard of it. Gospel of Jesus.
Yeah. I've heard something about that.
I've never heard of it until now.
Yeah.
And
Seems like I heard of another one.
Well, there's gossip of Mary Magdalene,
Yeah.
gossip
Yeah.
of Thomas.
Thomas, that's what
Yeah,
it was.
there are a lot of them out there that were suppressed, and so somebody put them in the book called the Apocrypha.
yeah.
And it's in the back of a lot of Bibles is the Apocrypha now, and it's Esdras and a whole bunch of stuff that we've never been exposed to.
I just recently saw in a television program a sample page of that Jesus gospel, and it has not been published. It's not been put out anywhere. It's been controlled.
And where are they gonna put it when they don't name any of their cathedrals after Jesus?
Yeah. Yeah.
We know, yeah, all the cathedrals are named after Saint Paul, Saint this, Saint that, Saint Ignatius, all this kind of thing. I was going through Europe and I thought, where the heck is the Cathedral of Jesus?
Yeah.
It isn't there.
We understand now how many times Jesus said, "Worship me." Right?
Zilch.
None.
Do not worship me, follow me.
He didn't start a church.
Right.
John 16:23 says, "From now on you will ask nothing of me. You will ask my Father, and he will give it to you. Oh. And we got people praying to Jesus. I know Jesus is going to give me this car. I know Jesus is going to give me this, give me that. So I mean, the prayer phones were just rife with this kind
Jesus.
of thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, the Catholics, the ones that I've heard, pray to Mary to tell
Tell
Jesus
yeah.
that this is what they need.
That's the intercessory idea. Yeah.
No God in there.
I've been thinking that just a little bit to the left of you, Bud, on the second shelf from the top.
Jesus Papers,
Life of Christ.
Life of Christ.
Yeah. Second shelf. Brown with gold.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I can't turn mine now.
It's like this thick. And you know what? It's all made up.
That's sad.
Yeah.
But I've been repeatedly struck lately since we've been doing this study of how in unity writings it constantly says the indwelling our incarnate Christ,
Yeah.
which is precisely the right wording.
Yeah.
It's Jesus was a way to teach this to the world.
Yeah.
Uh,
You needed a teacher.
They needed to put the words in somebody's mouth.
In somebody's
so
mouth, yeah.
Somebody, oh, let's call him Jesus. And they put the words in his mouth. But according to all the stuff that I'm reading, he wasn't there as a person. He was there as a teacher, as a symbolic teacher.
Where were those words going to come from if it didn't come through
It had to come, yeah.
some anthropomorphic being? Yeah.
Oh, Frank down at the barber shop, he wrote these words. Well, who would believe that?
Or God wrote them with his finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the last I knew, English didn't come into being until about the last 1,000 years.
He broke the tip of the pencil, so he had to use his finger.
So
It's amazing.
Is this where Kuhn did his research then? These books are the Korah,
He did.
Quran, rather.
He was able to read Greek. He was able to read Hebrew. He read multiple languages, and was an incredibly intelligent man.
Kuhn.
Kuhn.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredibly intelligent. His vocabulary is unbelievable.
Yeah, I know. I have to look up words.
Oh. There are more words in
Yeah.
his writing
Yeah.
that I never heard before.
Yeah.
I've never seen before. I have to read it with a dictionary. But
Doesn't that kind of interrupt
My
your
mother said about Mary
understanding?
Baker Eddy.
yeah,
It
but
wouldn't mind.
I start writing
Yeah.
them down, and eventually I start to.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what that means, and in time.
Yeah, or I write what it means at the top of the page where the word appears. William James, who is a philosopher, his work is like that. These people who wrote in the 1800s used a different kind of English than we now know. And that's why we have to keep looking them up.
Yeah, there's some strange
Yeah.
And
constructions.
as Bud and I discovered when we went to Mississippi, there were signboards everywhere. And they all were, Jesus do this, Jesus do that, Jesus do the other thing. Not once was God mentioned.
Not once.
Jesus
Not
is
once.
coming soon, so behave.
See, they've kept us by not teaching us the truth.
Yeah.
They've kept us from going to the source, from actually doing the work that we're here to do.
Yeah. Well, each town of any size had a Baptist church, or more than one, a Catholic church. Occasionally we saw, a Methodist?
Very
Or,
seldom. we very seldom saw a Catholic church. They were mostly.
No.
How
we
many
saw a lot of
unity
Catholic
churches did you see?
Well, none, but I know there are some down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a few out there. Yeah.
There's,
The thing that was the most fascinating and weird were the 3-story crosses that
Yeah.
were big around as a telephone pole out
Or-
in the middle of nothing, just
Yeah.
in the middle of a field.
or
There it
3
was.
crosses out in the middle of a cow pasture.
Mhm.
No explanation, you know.
Well, in case
I
we're
mean,
short
you know.
of crosses and we've got too many people to hang this week or to crucify this week.
Put them up in the field.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they had to have been incredible to put up as big around and as high as they
Oh,
were.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were really 3 stories at
There's
least.
some of those in Spain too. They're on the top of a mountain.
Now,
In Portugal.
now I feel like I'm beginning to understand far better where the truth is and how to find the truth, because I'll never find it outside. I'm going to have to find it through that divinity within myself, which means I have to find Christ in me.
Mm-hmm.
I have to believe in it. I have to know,
Yeah.
so that it is real to me that we are divine creatures. Going back all the way to Plato, animal and spiritual were both. And bodies, physicality is not evil. It's not. It's just another environment in which we learn and develop this understanding of who and what we are as spiritual beings.
Without human beings, God could not be here.
We are the
God consciousness, the consciousness that is in us, is within us. And if there was no humanity, God would not be here as consciousness.
this
Whoa.
this little few words that I learned back in the 60s. The Father and I are one, not two. For I am the place that God shines through.
Yep.
Oh. And yet, I love those words because they meant something to me, but I didn't really know what it meant. Because I didn't know that it really does exist in us. It's implanted.
You
in
thought it
us.
was a favor, not an
Yeah,
incarnation.
exactly. All this, Father, please, Father, I need this and I need that, and give me this and give me that. It's not about that. It's about knowing within yourself that the source is here, and it is your right and your inheritance to have the good that God is. We deny it for ourselves by not realizing that it's there. Just imagine, you're on a post, and when you were in the military, and you don't know they have a, what do they call it, where you go buy stuff,
Commissary.
commissary, or PX.
Ship's truck.
PX.
Yeah, you don't know that's there. So, where are you going to get your food? Where are you going to get another pair of underwear? You don't know how to find these things, do you?
No. I knew where to find the beer. I didn't
That's
care
all you
about the other
need,
stuff.
fella.
Yeah. We know what's important.
Yes, yes. And the beer is alcohol, which drives away all this extraneous stuff, and
Sure.
suddenly we know that we're God in action as us. With
Oh.
enough beers.
Kirby. What was her first name?
Kirby.
Yeah, she was like a little New England leprechaun, white hair, blue eyes, and recovered alcoholic, and she often reminded people, alcohol, it actually means, the word alcohol means spirit that divides.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are not unified in one, and
Yeah.
that's chaos.
Mhm.
Chaos. So it
Yeah.
creates chaos. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, it's we'll take off next time. At the bottom of page 147, is that
Yep.
what you agree with? Yeah. I'm going to turn that page down so I remember
Says it's
that.
important to be quite clear.
Let me see
Okay.
where we are. Oh, let's just finish this and then to the next section, the resurrection.
Okay.
It's important to be quite clear. Two levels of meaning are at stake in all of this. If my major sources and others of their school are correct, as I now am convinced they are, then in the ancient Egyptian and other mystery dramas, and in the four Gospels, the central figure represents both the Christus, divine principle, as it incarnates and dies, only to rise again in self-offering on behalf of all humanity, and also the soul of every individual in its journey to eternal life. It came to me with unparalleled illumination that the story of Jesus is the story of each of us in allegorical form. As spirit-gifted animals, we are crucified on the cross of matter. We are bearers of the Christ within and will one day be resurrected to a glorious destiny with God. Any soul is being crucified on the cross when it is alive in the physical body, according to the ancient esoteric wisdom. It is highly significant that crucifixion was an integral component of many of the mystery religions, and it undoubtedly found its dramatic prototype there. In the mystery ritual, the candidate for initiation was symbolically bound or nailed to a cross, and even in some rites put into a hypnotic coma, to be awakened from death after 3 days on Easter morning. Indeed, some authorities see in this type of ritual the basis for Jesus' claim that Lazarus, quote, is not dead, but sleepeth, end quote. The story originated in Egypt, then came to be a framework for a ritualistic demonstration of death and resurrection. One of the secrets of the transformative dynamite of the mystery religions was the regular use of very specific rituals, dramatizations, sounds, lights, and other effects to recreate symbolically the interchanges of consciousness being portrayed. This was the essence of their power. And as I've said in other days with you, that the not Mormons, that organization that's men only,
Masonic
thank you,
Masons.
the Masons.
Yeah.
They do their teaching this way. They watch these, we could call them spiritual plays. I once asked a friend of mine, I said, well, you say you go watch these plays. I said, what are they for? He said, they're mystical plays, and that's how we get to learn the stuff that we're trying to learn in the Masons, the principles that the Masons are teaching. They see it through these plays that people take part in. Mm-hmm. And they have rituals so that it's almost visceral when you actually participate in them. Mm-hmm. And some of they're like an initiation. There's something about being being bound, and they don't have their shirts on, and I don't know what else goes on in that, but they do this ritual, and everybody who becomes a member goes through that and experiences it, and there's a whole story and a play that goes with it that is teaching them something about the organization and about their lives. So,
Do they keep it secret then?
yeah.
Makes sense.
Their books, I guess they still do the books in, it's in code.
I think I've got one of those books from a
Yeah.
long time ago. It's from the Eastern Star,
Yeah.
which is
They
the
do it in
women's,
code.
women's organization of the nations.
Yeah.
And you have to know the code to be able to read them. And I don't know the code.
And my mother would talk about the stations, and each station of the cross had its own story and so forth. And so as you moved through the stations, you learned each story as you went.
Yeah.
She really loved it.
If you think of these myths like the Stations of the Cross, they're not just things to hang on the wall that are certain depictions of Jesus in the Passion. It's a teaching thing. When you see that, you should make a connection to what it means spiritually in you, what kind of event it is that goes on within ourselves that we experience, not him. And
You know, they moved the Via Dolorosa.
did they?
They did. When Jerusalem was divided between the Arabs and the Jews, the original Via Dolorosa that
Went into the wrong
Helena's-
territory.
Yeah, was on the Arab side. And so they moved it to the Jewish side so that the people could still come and walk the Via Dolorosa, which was not it.
Why don't they move hell to the other side?
Well, and maybe the people on that side needed that. You know, they just took the teaching away from them and said, no, this is ours.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of your ordination. Remember with the bound hands and on the floor?
Yes, yes. My ordination in Liberal Catholic Church. It's a lot of that kind of play, that theater that you experience.
Now we wouldn't be able to get up off the floor. I wonder what they do with that.
I needed help anyway. Yeah. Yeah.
Talking about this,
And I'm going to tell you something. My ordination in Unity, I didn't feel anything.
No.
It didn't mean any. It didn't mean anything except, oh, now I'm a Unity minister. My ordination in the Liberal Catholic Church, it left something good in me. All the symbolism that is in it. I felt things, and afterwards it's as if I was walking on off of the dirt, off the ground.
Huh.
You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was so different from my Unity ordination.
Yeah.
What's her name? Detroit. The black lady.
Johnny Coleman,
No,
black lady in Detroit. Oh, Ruth
Mosley.
Mosley.
She ordained my class, laying on hands of each one of us, and I didn't, it was just not anything, and that's not her doing.
And that's not her doing, no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't the whole